and gentlemen, today I want to talk to you about a certain issue that's been bothering me for a while already. I grew up in the Middle East, coming from a poor country in the Middle East. I lived in 3 countries and I traveled to others. However, I grew up in a very liberal family, in a very conservative neighborhood. My parents never bothered me too much with religion. They did ask me to pray, Friday prayers and whatever, but my father never wanted to pray. I lived in Malaysia too. Malaysia, the way they view the Islamic religion is very, very liberal, to be honest. They had something that was called moderate Islam and stuff like that, which is something very new to somebody who comes from that country. I lived also in Canada, and it seems that I had a few issues from the very beginning regarding religion, things from the Quran, things from the Hadith, stuff from different parts of the religion. Now, I don't know where to start or how to start this, but let me take you on a journey on how, I wouldn't say how I left the religion or how I came to the beliefs that I do have now, but I would say it's a journey away from what I would call myths, legends, and ideas that are really, in their core, are not what we grew up learning. Like in our schools, when we were kids, we learned religion from a very, I would say, conservative point of view in school. Now, we would have teachers who would beat the kids, teachers that would teach us that doing anything that the West does is not acceptable. We had people criticizing the Transformers, the TV show, the cartoon. We had people, religious teachers, that would teach us that a child was fighting in battles and how much of a hero he was. And that's when I was a child. Obviously, I grew up in my family, and my family understood these troubles. And they always told me one thing. Regardless of what they tell you or which sect these people would align themselves with, you always have to refuse and always say that you're just a Muslim. Now, my father never went to a Friday prayer. He never prayed, never cared. Every time I asked him, why don't you go to Friday prayer? This guy, he's an educated fella. He's not somebody who, he studied, like he did his PhD somewhere in Europe. I'm not gonna try to say where. My mother too, she grew up in another country in the Middle East that was a little bit more open-minded at the time. And she grew up around Christians and Muslims and Jews, and her doctor was Jewish and her neighbor was Christian. She considered everybody to be human. She never had, for once, never told me that these people are different. She always told me that everybody is the same. That's how I grew up at that time. Now, going to Malaysia, I didn't understand a lot of the khutbah and the Jummah. They would pray and they would speak in Malay. I understand that and I find that very interesting. But now, as I was growing up, there was always this one ayah. I'm not gonna mention the references here, but you guys can go look them up. But this ayah was talking about how we should be paying women the price of our pleasure that we had with them. Now, that ayah, since my childhood, bugged me. It bothered me. I didn't understand why God would ask for me to pay a woman. Was he promoting prostitution or was he not? It just sounded weird to me. However, as you grow up, you just ignore these things and you move on. Uh, I went to Malaysia, and in Malaysia, I found a bunch of people that are religious. It was my first few days in there, and then I got to know them. And then this one guy, he was a Sri Lankan Indian kid, very nice, very humble, very polite. And then they asked me to go with them to a trip. Now, on this trip, there were a lot of issues that I found. In the trip, these religious people were driving Mercedes. They were taking us to this little mosque in the middle of nowhere. But they didn't tell us that. At the beginning, they told us we're going to a nice place. We're going to see a river. We're going to have dinner. We might camp there, and then we're going to come back. Now, we went with them. Of course, me being me, the liberal kid, I always had multicultural friends. So I took my Christian friends, I took my British friends, I took everybody with me, and then I told them just pretend that you're Muslims and that's it, and let's just get on with this trip and see what's happening. We're getting a free trip. We're students. We don't have enough money, so we might as well just go with them. We did that, and we found out that these people started putting us in the circle, and then they started asking religious questions. It just sounded very weird. Then they started praying. Now my friends are Christian. They don't know how the fuck to pray. So it was funny for me, but we ended up just staying there, and I told my friends to pretend, and then I told them, how about this? We just go to the back of the line so that no imam would notice us. And then the kids started noticing us, and they started telling them. However, I told the imams that these guys are religious, but their families didn't teach them much about religion and all that stuff. So we get out of it. And then we ended up asking them that we're going to leave. The religious people there, the young kids, they told us you can't leave without asking the emir. I was wondering what the fuck the emir was, because I grew up in my family, and my family can't tell me what the fuck to do. So I was like, who is he? Why the fuck do I have to ask him to leave or not to leave? Anyway, they said just do it out of respect. My friends agreed. We went and we told them. We just left, and we never had to see them again. Every time, like, we had a couple of Saudi friends too. They were fantastic people. The moment these guys asked us to go with them again, we completely refused, and we said we're done with religion. Fuck this shit. Whatever. But in reality, in the heart of hearts, we never actually left religion. Actually, that was an introduction to a whole different world of I would say cute Islam. Now, living in there and seeing how people were living, different races, different people, it seemed like it was very liberal. A lot of people were free thinkers in my high school. We had a lot of fun. I never really cared too much about religion, but sometimes, every now and again, we would have a discussion about religion, me and my Christian friends. And I had this one stubborn guy who used to always argue about religion, and he was a Christian guy, and then he used to tell me, why are women wearing this, and why are women wearing that, and why, you know what I mean? And I used to get mad, and then I would argue with him, and then we would be always debating each other about these things. Now, but we are still good friends. The problem is we're both religious, but we come from two different religions, and we were aggressive about our religions to a point. But of course, out of no knowledge, like we didn't know much. And then the more we continued, the more we lived together, the more we understood each other, and then we became a little bit more nice to each other, and we tried to look for the commonalities rather than the differences. I decided it's fine. I'm done with that country, with Malaysia. Let's go to Canada. In Canada, things will be definitely brighter. I already got my papers. I got accepted in university and everything. But I'll be honest with you. I grew up not caring too much about religion. Um, and now I understood a lot of things about religion, but in a cute way. So I would listen to people like Hamza Yusuf and Tariq Ramadan and these guys that will always make the religion seem like it's very beautiful and very peaceful and everybody else is wrong and everybody else who's conservative is wrong. And, so I was okay with that. Now, after going to Canada, one of my first experiences with the Arabic community and the Muslim community, which I didn't have to face in Malaysia, because in Malaysia I had a lot of multicultural friends and I've had to work. My mother and father were paying me. I had a good life. Now, going to that part of the world in Canada, I was introduced to a lot of friends. I tried to get jobs. It was a little tough. So I applied for some restaurants and, which was my very first time meeting Arabs after 5 years. Now, I don't mean Arabs, I mean Muslims. Now, every time we spoke, every time I said something, they always called me a secular. I didn't understand why. I was religious. But then when you joke with me about Muhammad or anything like that, I wouldn't care. It's your opinions. I respect somebody else's opinions. I never cared. I was like, yeah, that's your opinion, but to me, he's somebody that I respect and I admire. At the same time, I felt a little bit of racism coming from them. A little bit of, they would call me an atheist. They would call me secular. They would call me kafir. They would call me a lot of other names. I never understood why. I used to pray with them. I used to fast with them. If anything, I actually understood a little bit more of the religion, like the religious fiqh, than them. So every now and again we would discuss something and then I would tell them something and they'd be like, oh, so how do you know this? And then they go search it up and then they find out that it was right. But I myself was not very keen on religion from a Salafi point of view or from a fundamentalist point of view. I used my brain, which is something I never understood until I started reading about the Mu'tazila and favoring the brain over copying, which is al-aql qabla al-naql. So now that I'm in Canada and things are going well, I decided with one of my roommates, with my housemates, to go to a mosque. We go to this mosque and then we pray, and then at the end of the khutbah, this Imam was reciting it's not a recitation, he was saying this dua, Allahumma zalzil al-ardha min tahti aqdamihim wa yattam atfalahum. He said in Arabic. I didn't know if he understood it or not. The hadith, not the hadith, the dua was actually says, may God, it's talking about the Jews and the Christians and basically the kuffar, everybody who's not a Muslim. It says that may God destroy the ground under their feet, and may God make their kids orphaned and burn them and destroy them and all that stuff, and show them your powers and all that stuff. And I freaked out. I could not for the life of me sit down because I was really, really pissed off at that time. A lot of my friends are atheists and Christians and Jews, and I had Hindu friends. We made fun together. When it was a hard time for me, they would come and help me out. They were brothers and sisters and family and girlfriends, and they're family to me. I got pissed off. I went to the Imam while he was. The moment he finished the prayer, he said, "Salaam alaikum, assalamu alaikum, wa rahmatullah." I went up to him and I was like, Imam, do you understand what you just said in Arabic? And he said, yes, kind of. And then I was like, are you sure this is what you want to be saying in mosques in Canada? Which I think, in my perspective, is very, very, very violent and very disrespectful to the country that gave you all the money that you need, all the freedom that you need, all the freedom of speech that you need, the freedom of religion that you need to practice, to be a law-abiding citizen, but you're not being a law-abiding citizen. You're being disrespectful, you're being vengeful, you're being hateful to the people that showed you the most kindness you could see in this world. Your own people didn't give you that kindness. And then he kind of apologized to me, and then whatever. And after that day, I struggled a little bit. That incident by itself pissed me off for a long time. I ended up going to my room. I sat down, and I always listen to Hamza Yusuf. A week after, there was this meeting conference for Muslims in a big hall, and a lot of what do you call them? Religious scholars come, and we sit down, and they talk, and you get to meet them and shake hands with them. One of the scholars, I don't want to mention his name, which is okay, I'll mention his name, I don't care. Hamza Yusuf. Hamza Yusuf was like a god to me. He was the definition of kindness to me. This guy came in a Mercedes S-Class. He came in with 5 dudes protecting him. He walked into an Islamic revival conference with people that looked like bodyguards. Downstairs, everybody else left, and you could see the fancy cars they were driving, or they were escorted in. I didn't understand that. It just mind boggled me. I went with a friend of mine, and then this friend of mine told me, and he's religious, like we both had this religious period of time. He told me, don't you think that this guy is a gangster? And then he said it in a nice way, like he meant it in a nice way. I took it in, and I was like, yes, he does actually. He walked in like a gangster, 5 bodyguards and Mercedes, and the whole apparatus. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at that point. It bothered me a little bit. I went downstairs, and he finished his speech and stuff, and then I asked him a question. I asked him, why do you think the Middle East is in this position that it's in right now? He told me one thing. He told me people in the Middle East are like an egg. They're soft from the inside and hard from the outside. How could you consider that an explanation? It didn't sit well with me. And then I shook hands with him and I left. These 2 experiences bothered me a little bit over a few years. They created a lot of questions, and those questions led to more questions, and it bothered me a lot over time. Now, I decided never to go to a mosque again, because people in the mosque are usually just preaching violence. And I was a Muslim, and to me that was still preaching violence. I didn't understand why they're preaching violence. It doesn't make sense to me. So I went through a period of time where I was mad at God. This God that allowed verses like these to be said in his house, the house of prayers. I did not like what I saw in the mosques. I did not like what people thought. I did not like the books that I read. I rebelled. I rebelled against this God, and I said, okay, forget this. I don't give a fuck if you take me to hell or if you burn me, but you are not worthy of my worship. As long as you preach hate against other human beings that you created, you put them in that position. You decided, you know their future, and you know their past, and you know what's going to happen in the future to them. Although you know all of this, you still put them on this earth, and you still did not show them the right way, the right path, and you still are preaching hate. Now, that was my opinion at that time. I was really bothered. For the next 5 years, I just did not pray. I did not pray. I did not. I actually fasted still. I fasted for another 2 years. Another 2 years or 3. 2 years. 2 years. The third year, I did 15 days. So the third year, I did 15 days, and that one day during Ramadan, I was listening to this beautiful speaker that I met in my like in one of the restaurants that we go to. He's famous. You can see him on YouTube. Tariq Fatah. I sat down with him, and then he told me something about the religion teaching, like the religion is all about sex and woman and slavery, and he said something about violence and basically dicks and pussies. I kind of freaked out a little bit because there's still that Muslim in me. I'm a Muslim still, but I'm mad at God. I'm just a Muslim who's mad at God. Because God is not fair. That's how I took it. But at the same time, those things that he said resonated with me for a little bit. I ignored them. I ignored any teachings. I didn't go to any mosque. I did not pray. I did not read Quran. I did not do anything. Year and a half ago, I decided, let me give this another shot. Maybe there's something wrong. Maybe this God that created us did not actually say these things. Maybe he's a nice guy, but we're just misunderstanding him. Maybe things are not what they seem to be, and these Muslims are just not understanding the religion. Maybe I'm just judging things too fast. So I decided to search. I decided to make 2 lists. One for the pros and one for the cons. I put these 2 on a spreadsheet on my computer, sat down and started reading tafsir, Quran, hadith, whatever, stories, whatever. Now, I used to always think by my brain. Now I was like, okay, let me just understand how these people think and how they read the Quran and how they interpret things and how they... So I understood that the most reasonable way to understand something is what they call is like in their understandings, the Salafi way, to follow the Salaf. Now, I read things through the Salafi eyes. The Salaf basically is it is like the simplest way to say it, and even though I may mix it up, but the easiest way to say it would be that these guys would follow only the interpretations from the Salaf scholars, Salafi scholars, which is the old, the ancient, the scholars that were as close as possible to Muhammad's time. Those are the people that would understand the language. Those are the people that would understand the culture. Those are the people that lived that life right after his passing. And if there's anything that he explained from the Quran or any tafsir that he did of the Quran, there will be an explanation for it by him, and therefore you cannot do ijtihad, which is basically you cannot do your own tafsir or come up with ideas on what this means and what that means. Now, Also, the Quran, if it's clear, it's clear. But I came from the perspective that the Quran is bayan, which means that it's clear. I came to the point where I decided to read about this guy Muhammad, like how did he live his life, and why he lived it that way, and what's happening. Like there is something wrong I do not understand. Now, on the two sheets, I kept adding the good things and the bad things. The good things, for some reason, did not go like they were not increasing. The bad things were increasing. Especially when I was reading how he married his wives, and what happened to Safiya, and how he killed her family and her husband, and he had sex with her on the way, and then how Aisha he married her, and there's a hadith, it's called Hadith al-Urjuha, which means the hadith of the swing. You know you know how you sit on that swing and it moves on, because she was a child. It says in the hadith that she came in with her toys. There's this story of him and Zainab, and the reason why now the Muslims don't adopt is because his adopted son, Zayd, was married to Zainab bint Jahsh, and then Zainab bint Jahsh, what happened to her is he came to her house, and then he saw a little bit of her legs or something like that. You can read these in the hadiths, and he said Subhana muqallib al-qulub, which is basically almost like flirting. Like he's like, oh my god, you like it's like, oh great, he flips the heart upside down, basically something like that. And it sounded like a flirt, and then she went, and then she told her husband, which is his adopted son, and then the story kept going back and forth, and then he told him divorce her, and then the moment he divorced her, he married her, like Muhammad married her. He married his adopted son's wife after he asked him to divorce her. That pissed me off. That really pissed me off. I was like, what the fuck? So we cannot adopt children in need because somebody wanted to have sex. That just blew my mind. Safiya too, like Safiya's story, it was like very depressing. It was very fucking depressing. Like if you don't call that rape, I don't understand what else you can call it. And then I'm not sure if that hadith was true or no. The one where he married his aunt. I don't know if she's his aunt or like a far aunt or something like that. But I heard something about that. Anyway, so basically the two sheets kept increasing. The cons kept increasing more than the pros, and the more the cons increase, the more questions I have, and they kept increasing, and I reached a point where I had to read about the religion from a critical point of view. So there is this guy, a fantastic scholar that was in Saudi. He was actually a very good scholar, and then he wrote a book complaining to God, is telling him, basically he's showing the contradictions in the book of the Quran. It shows how, like for instance, God, are you gonna, like he says in some ayahs that he's gonna send people that don't believe to hell. Sometimes he says that he will torture them here, then he says that they will send them to eternity, or there's like a limit for a period of time, and like there are a lot of contradictions. And then I thought, like he said one thing that was very interesting. He said, how could you be sinning for 80 years of your life, if anything? 80 years of your life, which is a very, very, very short period of time in comparison to the history of the world, or like the time of the world, let alone for infinity. How could this God not be a sadist for allowing you to burn in hell And he explains the details of how he's going to burn you and how he's going to pull you, and that 70 sabona diran, which is 70 arm length chains, and how he's going to torture you for eternity. Now the world is like a few billion years, give and take. I don't know how to even think of infinity. How would you be a just God to torture someone for eternity for sinning 80 years? Let alone, forget about the 80 years. In those 80 years, of course, most of your life you're just busy working, studying, doing your thing, eating, drinking, having sex probably with your wife or something. Now, how many times are you going to sin? Like, how many sins can you have? There's not a lot of sins. Like, okay, let's say 25 years of your life you sinned. No problem. Okay, let's say you sinned 80 years. Let's say you sinned 120 years. 120 years is not worth burning for eternity. It is just not fair. The God, if he calls himself just, this is not justice. There's no way in hell this is justice. Now, this is another issue that arose. So the wives of the Prophet, justice, and then I kept reading. I did not stop. This video is already 30 minutes. Fuck. Okay, I kept reading and I did not stop. And then I would say I went a little bit to the scientific stuff, because that's the stuff that held me back for a long time. It kept bothering me because it kept, like, they tell you ijaz almi, which means the miracles of the Quran, and I'm like, the miracles of the Quran, okay, no problem, let me just have a second look at that. Now God, for some reason, decided, it's not God, it's the writer of the Quran, whomever it is. It bothers me not. The writer of the Quran wrote a few things, and then they said that it was it's not problematic, like it was written in perfect Arabic and all that stuff. Now, perfect Arabic, okay, I'll take that. And then I go to a book. I find a book online, errors of the linguistic errors of the Quran. That was an issue. That was by Sami Adib. He wrote 2,400 linguistic errors. I was shocked. I read them and then I was like, whoa, like, what the fuck? I never thought there were errors. Now I go to the science and the other miracles, and then I find out that God thinks, or the writer of the Quran thinks, that the sun rotates around the world. تجري لمستقر لها. And I was like, what the fuck? This is just strange. I find out that he thinks that the sun sets into a muddy spring. And that's problematic. There are a lot of people would always say that dahaha means he circled it. The original meaning of the world has nothing to do with making it look like an ostrich egg. But this is the definition that they gave nowadays. I don't understand who brought it. I don't understand how they came up with it. But that's how. Anyway, if God said once dahaha, I'll give you that. And then he says farashaha, basataha, all that stuff, which means he flattened it. He flattened it like a carpet and stuff like that. And it all sounds like the world is flat. I mean, the earth is flat. Now, the earth is flat in the eyes of God. There's only one ayah that talks about dahaha, which is still meant like, what do you call it, text gymnastics. People are just making it sound like that, but it's really not. And then he says, he puts Jabal Rawasiya, which means like you put the mountains on top of this earth so that it doesn't move. God thinks that the earth is flat and it's like a piece of paper if you put pins on it. This was ridiculous. This is fucking ridiculous. I don't know what to say. I fail to see how God would put mountains and think that it will hold up the earth so it doesn't shake or anything, and it would be circular. But if it's flat, it makes so much sense, because if he puts those mountains, then it means that the world would not shake like it. And when you listen to these imams or sheikhs in Saudi, they actually say, yeah, it's the flat earth is flat, and if you think otherwise, you're kafir. And they tell you that the sun rotates around the earth, and they tell you that there's always this excuse for what's it called, that the sun sets in a muddy spring of water, and then they always say that it was Dhul Qarnayn who said it. Now, I would take that if there were no hadiths talking about it. If there was no hadith talking about these ayahs, or tafsir talking about these ayahs, they used to kill people who did not believe that the sun rotates around the earth. This is ridiculous. Anyway, so that's another thing. I read about the baby, the fetus, and the miracle of the fetus and all that stuff. Now, the issue with that, what do you call it? That verse, or like a bunch of verses. The issue is that it says that this fetus will be bones, and then kasawna al-idam al-ahma, which means it's like kasawna. It's like when you cover something, right? So you cover the bones with skin. Now, if you look at if you read biology a little bit, and you ask professors, they would tell you that bones and skin grow at the same time. There's nothing called bones grow and then skin grow. So that was another shocking fact that I had to deal with, that I didn't understand. I really, really wanted God to be true. I really wanted this religion to be true, but it's just like the moment you disclose one issue, it's like a domino effect. One falls and the next falls, and it keeps falling. It's very problematic for me. Now, there's a lot of other things. For the past year and a half, I spent 8 months in my house, not leaving the house, to just write all the criticisms and all the good things. The first month and a half, I was just writing both, until I reached something called abrogation. Abrogation is nasakh wal mansukh, which means the verses that came late, the latter verses, they cancel out the previous verses. So let's say if God says no compulsion in religion, there is this ayah 5 in Surah At-Tawbah, which it's called ayat al-Sayf. It cancels out no compulsion in religion, and it cancels out, I think, 120 something other ayahs that are peaceful. And that just burnt everything I wrote that was good on my paper, on my sheet, on the computer. Uh, at least 70%. It cancels out 70% of what I wrote. That was very troublesome. I did not like it. There were good things in the Quran and there were bad things, but the bad things were accumulating more and more. So I kept reading about criticisms. I'm at that point where I was already mad at God, but I wanted God to be true. I really tried to come back. But the moment one domino piece falls, all the domino pieces keep falling. I kept reading, then I was like, okay, if all of this is a bunch of nonsense, let me see what the previous writings were. What are the oldest scriptures that we have? What the oldest Quran that we have? And then I looked, and then there's Birmingham, there's Sana'a palimpsest, there are other pieces. Now, based on the paleontologists that I was looking at, especially this gentleman by the name of Al-Masayyah, Muhammad Al-Masayyah, if I'm not mistaken, he's the only Arab Quran paleontologist in the Middle East. Germany started that field, and a lot of people from Germany came up to a lot of conclusions, and the conclusions were not very happy. A lot of people didn't like them. The Sana'a palimpsest, after a few discoveries the Germans made, were taken back, and they were hidden from Germany. Nobody wanted to show them to them again, and the president refused to give it to them or something like that, based on the story. We wanted them to be in those labs because we wanted to see what's happening. And you read these things, and then you find ayahs don't compare with other ayahs, and then you have indahu becomes abdahu, and like stuff like that, like, because the previous ones, like the old Arabic, it didn't have dots, it didn't have punctuations, it didn't have hamza, it didn't have nothing, like none of that. It was just basically lines, a few dots that they had, but they would confuse a ta with a tha with a ba with the. So it was very problematic in the sense that it's, if you're gonna make a sentence out of those things, you would have to put the dots, and then you're gonna have to put the punctuations yourself, and this is what happened after. Now the previous ones were how would I say this? The previous ones did not have them. They were written by a bunch of people that had the money to get a leather and write on it, because that leather would not be cheap. It was expensive. You're gonna have to cut a lot of sheep for that, or whatever that animal is. Anyway, so Muhammad al-Masayyah, he put a book. I read about it, and then I read a little bit of it, and he made a show, and then he talked about it, and like a lot of troubling stuff. I went to this other guy, Hamid Abdel Samad, which is magnificent. This guy went through everything in detail. In Arabic, though, unfortunately. There's no English translation for what he's saying. This gentleman has a show all about the mistakes, the contradictions, his story, people's stories, politics, everything that has to do with Islam. I listened to every single episode. I usually would research everything after. It's very troublesome. It's very distressing, very disappointing. I realized that whatever happened in that period of time had a lot of lies. Everybody was lying about something. You can never, because it was they call it like Tawatur meaning if you're gonna save the information, you're gonna save it like usually in Europe, or after getting the printer, you would basically you would basically transform information or convey information through text. But these guys were just saying, everybody would say it to the next person, and the next person will say it to the next person, and you can see what could happen, like the issues that could happen after a few 100 years. Like it's already enough that this guy al-Bukhari came 100 something years after the death of Muhammad, and he started writing his 600,000 hadiths, which is a ridiculous story by all means. Anyway, then you read those hadiths and you're like, what the fuck, like seriously, like the Prophet will pee towards Bayt al-Maqdis, which is like doesn't make sense like why. You would read stories about Maria and how he got busted by his other wife while he was having sex with Maria, and then an ayah comes and protects him, and then Aisha says that it seems that God is following your desires, yattaba'aka ala hawak, or something like that. And then you read stories about how the sheep or the chicken ate 2 ayahs from the Quran, and then you read stories about how the Quran, one of the surahs was supposed to be longer than Surah Al-Baqarah, or as long as Surah Al-Baqarah. Like there's so much information that it confuses the fuck out of the person. You would not know what's happening. A lot of lies, a lot of confusion. It's just, I don't know. Like, I don't know how to explain it. That the more you read, the more it shocks you. And then I was like, okay, now I don't care about all of this. Whether there's a God or not, it doesn't matter. Now back home, they don't teach us evolution. Evolution doesn't exist for some fucking reason. I read about evolution. That thing blew my fucking mind. I don't know. Like, evolution, you know how now I just relate to other people in the sense that to a lot of people that are atheists, or what do you call them? A lot of people that are agnostic, in the sense that I simply just, I'm not convinced that there's a God. I'm not convinced of the religious God. I don't care if there's another God who never gave a fuck about us and just created us and just left us there. It makes no difference to me. He didn't bother me. He didn't talk to me. He didn't, you know what I mean? But this personal God is not possible. It's like this theist God is not possible. The deist God, I may accept. I may consider it. I may accept it. It wouldn't make a difference to me. But the theist God is just impossible to believe. What kind of God would ask Muhammad to burn his own mosque? Muhammad is the first person to burn his own Muslim people in a mosque. How could you do that? There's Masjid al-Darar, the one he burnt. Like, what did he leave for ISIS? Like, seriously. They're doing exactly what he's, like, his teachings, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. This is just annoying. There's nothing that Muhammad did. Sorry, there's nothing that ISIS did that Muhammad didn't do. From cutting to killing to... Which bothers me. A lot of people would call him a pedophile. I don't agree with that. I don't like him. The act that he did, maybe pedophilic. But was he a pedophile? No. A lot of people married children at that time. So it was not something out of the ordinary. A lot of people did it. People didn't understand. They were a bunch of savages. The fuck do you expect? Anyway. So I would give him that. Like, I wouldn't disrespect him in that sense. Do I think this man had mental issues? Quite possibly. And he might have delusions, maybe uh, schizophrenia, maybe. I don't know. He could possibly, like, if you study his story, you might think that, because every now and again, when the wahi comes, he falls, and like there are hadiths that say that he falls, and then he like all the signs of epilepsy, uh, delusions too. I don't know. I read these things and I was very surprised. I never thought about them before. Think about it this way: this man would only get the information that he tells us when he's alone, when he's in Ghar Hira, right? Now, if he's in Ghar Hira and he's alone, this man, nobody saw him. Nobody saw the wahi that came to him. Then he comes out and he tells people, I saw this, I saw that, and this guy told me that guy. Even the story where he went with the flying donkey horse kind of thing, mule, whatever you want to call it, that doesn't make any sense. First, in the sense, okay, the Quran says that he doesn't have miracles, so how could he have this miracle? This is one contradiction that I see. The other contradiction, apparently, Bayt al-Quds was not built at his time. It was not a 7th century thing, so it didn't exist then, based on historians, which is strange again. So that's another contradiction. The third thing is, okay, no problem. I'll believe this, and I will ignore the historians, the archaeologists, the fact that the story is too magical for me. And I would say, okay, you went to the sky. You were on a flying mule or donkey or horse. Why didn't you make a few spins to show the neighborhood? Why is there no recording from other people that they saw you with this thing? Why didn't you go to another country where they can write something about it? Mention it in history so that at least God should know that there will be people that are confused right now. People like me. Why didn't you go to those places? Show them that you came on a flying horse. Let them touch it. The details of all of this is explained. But that there's no, and there's a lot of detail that explains how God would torture people and how the majority of women will go to hell. Women are a whole another issue. Women, don't get me started. Like, women in these religions, like, I don't know how the fuck they survive, to be honest. Like, I'm a man, I'm already struggling. I don't know how women like, they were compared with black dogs and, what do you call them? Bahaim. Fuck, I forgot this. Basically, like cows or camels or whatever. They were compared to these, and they called them najas. Same thing like the Christians, they call them najas. Like the Quran calls the Christians najas, and he calls people that kalhamari yahmilu asfar, which means like he's like a donkey, he carries weight and stuff like that, and like a lot of insults. Like, how can, okay, women, I'm not going to talk about them because there are so many issues about women, and I'm sure a lot of people are already talking about them. It's just, it's very disturbing when you talk about women. And I don't understand how a woman could accept, like, it's enough to read the stories of the women that were enslaved. Women in the religion, until now, by fiqh, you can marry a girl who was just born. How could you do that? Fiqhiyan, fiqh. Slaves. You can have sex with a woman that you captured, even if she had a husband. And it's in an ayah that comes, that says something like, حرم عليكم المحصنات, something like that, حرم عليكم المحصنات إلا ما ملكت أيمانكم, which means married women are forbidden for you, except those who are mulk yamin, which means enslaved basically, or captured, or captives. And the hadith that talks about this ayah, it says that because this was like, a lot of people will be like, no, that was normal at that time, it was okay. It's like the whole story about marrying children. No, it was not. These people, they came to Prophet Muhammad. He said, they told him, listen, do we have sex with these girls? We know them. We know their husbands. The hadith says, taharraju min ityanihim, which means they were embarrassed or shy to have sex with them because they know their husbands. But then, this is Sabaya Autas. You guys have to read about this. It was just the most ridiculous thing ever. Like, I don't understand how a god or like a prophet or somebody who considers himself pious by any chance could do something like this. Anyway, I was talking about Sabaya Autas, and I was talking about how you can marry children, fiqhiyan, which is very ridiculous. And then there's how it's okay to kill somebody who doesn't believe or who's not convinced. How is this even a thing? A lot of people would be like, no, there has to be shurut, like there has to be reasons for. No, there's no reason. The moment you refuse to believe, you're given 3 days for istitaba, and that's it. But once you start saying stuff to other people, then there is no forgiveness here. It's okay to just take your life. I don't understand. Like, if you come to me and you tell me, hey, there's this cow behind this wall, and I'm like, okay, can you prove it to me? Show me, test it, find a way to prove it to me. It's fine, I don't care. And then you'd be like, oh, you don't believe? Okay, I'm gonna kill you. What the fuck is that? What the like what the fuck? I'm so fucking confused. It's not right. Anyway, so that's another issue that I came across. I have, you don't understand, I have so many issues, so many, from everywhere, like paleontologists, archaeologists, like even archaeologists, they would say like a lot of them are not even convinced that Muhammad existed, or even Jesus existed, or Moses. The Jews are confused because they can't find any evidence for Moses, let alone Muhammad. There's no evidence of any god by any chance. Like, there are studies done. There's a study in Harvard, I think, that was done on prayer and the strength of prayer, and if it's effective, if it works. Apparently it doesn't. It makes no difference. You can look it up, actually. This study is very interesting. Now, there's another guy who suggested something. He said, if you want to prove that there's a god, or convince me that there's a god, we do one thing. Every time we flip a dice, you raise your hand and you ask God to make it a number 6. Now, every time you flip that dice for 50 times, give me 70%, give me 60% of the dice becoming number 6, and I'm cool. Something like that, you know? And then I would believe, I'd be convinced. So dice could be one way, prayer could be one way. I don't know, there's many ways or multiple ways that you can try to show that there is a God, or your God is true, or whatever. I'm not convinced, to be honest. I find it very difficult right now at this point, after 7 years of this nonsense. I cannot show you or tell you everything in one video, but this is one video where I just rant because I just want to feel good, because I can't talk to people right now. Every time I talk to people, they tell me God, I'm like, shut the fuck up. I don't know how, I don't know how to approach this. My brain shut down. I had to put every single little detail. It's like coding. I'm coding the DOS. No, I'm using DOS to create Windows. Forget that. I'm using DOS to create fucking iOS. like it's complicated. Um, like I had to rethink a lot of things. I had to understand a lot of things. Read a lot of philosophy. Read a lot about um, akhlaq, which is fucking. How can I forget this word? My brain now is not thinking. Anyway, so morals. So I read a lot about morals. I read different people's opinions on how morals are. I read Dawkins' books. I read Hitchens' books. I read Sam Harris's books. I read Nawabi's book. I read so many books that I read and I listen to every single day. Until this moment, I have not stopped reading and listening. For some reason, I mean, it's very shitty that this God that I hoped to be existing in my mind doesn't exist anymore. But at the same time, I'm really glad. I'm really glad that there's this weight that was lifted off my shoulders. Like, really fucking glad. I don't have that weight to carry anymore. It was... Myths are horrible. They do horrible things to human beings. But at the same time, you have to look at it from a different perspective too. Like atheists, I speak to a lot of atheists and agnostics. Like when I was agnostic, like I became agnostic after a while, and then I was cool with it. I was okay with it. I was very nice, actually. I liked that personality better than the Muslim one, and I liked it better than the atheist one, because I feel like sometimes I'm a militant atheist, because like I would try to be like, okay, fuck this, like don't tell me God bless you and all that stuff. But I try to come back to that. Like I'm trying my best to be just reasonable, to understand that people, regardless of what happens, a lot of people are still brainwashed. A lot of people don't understand. A lot of people are not interested. A lot of people don't give two fucks. A lot of people do believe in these things, but they don't want to commit any violence. They just don't want anything. They just want to believe, and that's it. They feel good that they have this parent who's taking care of them, who's gonna send them to this brothel when they die. They're okay with it. I mean, if they're okay with it, I don't mind. I like it. It bothers me not. I love the brothel idea. It's a fantastic idea, to be honest. But when you think about it realistically, you're like, seriously, God? Like, what the fuck were you thinking? Is this your best? Is this your best shot? Sending me to a brothel? Why did you just fucking let me fucking here? Let me just have sex in here and that's it. And when I go there, give me something that fills my brain up. You know what I mean? Something that's useful. Something that, like sex. Like it's just the thinking of these ideas. They just tell you that they came from a man who was a desert dweller. I'm not talking about Muhammad, like, because it could be not from Muhammad. Muhammad could have existed or could have not. Maybe they're just lies or myths that came from the Umayyads, the Abbasis, whatever. Somebody decided to come up with these ideas. To control people, maybe to comfort people, maybe to create society. This Israeli guy, he was talking about stories and the power of stories, and religion is a story. It's a story that gathers a bunch of people, for good or bad. It was necessary at one point of time, but then the more advanced the society gets, the less you care about these stories, and you change the story. The story changes, the heroes change. So you move on from a religious story with a hero that was murdering and killing and doing whatever, to another story that deals with economy, like let's say Marx and these guys, and Adam Smith. Then you move to another story which is very political, and then you move into another story, and now we're in this story in the age of technology, the age of digital stuff, the age of robots. We're in this story where we have people like Elon Musk, who has all the answers, But these answers, I mean, not all the answers, but like, who has better answers than the previous ones? And these people and scientists who are actually doing something. Like, we don't have to pray anymore for this being, this metaphysical alien, to to cure us, because prayers apparently don't work. And we don't need prayers because they're not going to work. They're just a waste of time. It makes you feel comfortable, feel better, but they don't actually work. But then you have vaccines, you have pills, you have injections, you have something that will keep your headache away. Like before, people, I don't know how they dealt with their headaches, to be honest. I would fucking die. But or a toothache, holy fuck, you can fucking die of that shit. But then you think about it and you're like, okay, maybe people needed the religion for these things, because maybe they could pray a few times and then to be comfortable, maybe. But at the end of the day, if you think about it again, now we're in the age of we are God. We created God in the past because we wanted that parent, but now we are God. We can cure a lot of things. Like, even hopefully in a few years we're not gonna hear about AIDS, or we're not gonna hear about cancer. These will be things that we can tackle right away with a pill or something, you know what I mean? Or a surgery or something, you know? Nanotechnology or something, I don't know. It's just strange, like your point of view, your perspective, after all of this journey, it changed, not drastically. It's like you're reformatting your brain and having to fill up all the gaps again. It was tough. It is still tough. I'm still filling up. I'm still reading. I'm still understanding. I'm trying to be the nice person that I was. I was always nice, to be honest. Like, even when I was in the peak of religiosity, I still told my friend we can disagree, and at the end of the day, we can still go have a cup of coffee, we can chill, we can be friends, we can be best friends, we can argue about things and still be best friends. And that's what I did, and I will always do that. Regardless, by the way, all this video, I just want to let you know that I completely don't agree with people discriminating against Muslims. Just to let you know, this video, I'm talking in this video for my Muslim friends. I don't care if somebody, like, I don't want somebody to misunderstand it and think that this is an attack on this, an attack on that. No, absolutely not. This is just to give my Muslim friends another perspective. I grew up a Muslim, I lived a Muslim, but then there were points that it was too hard. Like, it was very, very difficult. I still suffer from that, and but at the end of the day, you have to be nice, you have to be respectful, you have to debate things with a sense of responsibility. Don't follow the, like, even if you think that there's a God, how are you going to reach that God? How do you want that God to appreciate you if you're not following the evidence where it leads you? You have to follow the evidence and where it leads you, and not follow your biases. You have to stay away from biases, and that doesn't make sense. You have to follow the evidence. It leads you wherever it takes you. It's fine. If there's a God, he'll appreciate it. If there is no God, who cares? You did your thing, you're enjoying your life, you're having a good time with this. Yeah, just do your thing. To be honest, like, that's how I take it. That's how I take my life. I try to be as nice as possible to people. A lot of people will, like, when I start talking or something, this is how I know. I used to be brainwashed, but my parents gave me a little bit of critical thinking skills. But and one of the teachers, one of my English teachers, actually, she became very religious because she was her her father was a Jew and her mother was a Christian, and then she became a Muslim. And then she was teaching me about critical thinking, and I look at myself today and I'm thinking, holy fuck, I'm the one who left, and she's the one who got stuck. I don't understand how that happened. But then I don't know. I love that teacher. She was fantastic. And I have like I have a lot of Muslim friends, and I love every single one of them. I don't have any issues with any of them. Even some of them would have some extreme ideas, but then you would sit down with them and then you would discuss them, and then they would be like, you know, maybe that makes sense. Like, it takes a while to understand, but then some people would shut down completely. Like some people, there was this one girl that I was talking to, and I somehow I mistakenly spoke to her, and then we spoke for a little bit, and then she told me how I'm speaking of I'm blaspheming her, and I'm like, what are you saying? Blasphemy? I'm teaching you your religion and you're telling me I'm blaspheming you? She doesn't understand. She doesn't understand anything about Islam. Nothing, like zero. And then she tells me, you're blaspheming me, you're this, you're that. And she wears the hijab for some reason. She doesn't understand anything about the hijab. She doesn't know that it was just a segregation symbol between the slaves and the free. And the slaves had to walk topless. You know, slave females had to walk topless. You guys have to read this, the fiqh of the slaves. You have to read them. You would be shocked. Like, it's very fucking shocking. And the fiqh of the Christians and the Jews that live under under the Muslims. They call them dhimmis. Qawanin Ahl al-Dhimma, or something like that. Fiqh Ahl al-Dhimma. Which is the laws of the Ahl al-Dhimma, which is the Christians and the Jews and the people of the book. It was very you have to read them. Like, there's no way I can explain to you how disrespectful it is to them. There's an ayah in the Quran that says something al-jizyata wa hum saghirun, which means the Christians and the Jews, or the people of the book, would have to give you the jizya, which is basically the tax, wa hum saghirun, which means, and they are belittled. So a lot of caliphs, they used to use their creativity in how to take that money. So let's say they would step on somebody's head and they would take the money from their hand, or they would ask them to bend and kiss their whatever, and then, you know what I mean? So they would be so creative in these things because it was an order that came from God in the Quran. So of course they have to do it. A lot of issues, a lot of things that are horrible, but a lot of things that are nice. Like, look, at the end of the day, we can criticize the religion, we can criticize the books, the ideas, the thought, but human dignity has to be given. Like, a lot of Muslims don't know these things. A lot of Muslims never looked up. A lot of Muslims don't give two fucks. A lot of Muslims were driven into these things without having critical thinking. So look, the shutdown that happens, like, I can see the glitch that happens in people's brains when I talk about these things. A lot of people will be like, and then you'll be like, what the fuck happened to you here? It's just, you know, it happened to me too, by the way. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people, like, I met a few friends that left Islam a long time ago, and then when I was speaking to them, and then they tell me information like this, it's like I was hypnotized, and now I just fucking woke up out of that like, it was horrible. I was all I can say is it was horrible. The moment you wake up, you start feeling very comfortable. You start appreciating enlightenment values. You start appreciating the West. You start appreciating the East. You start appreciating people, humanity. You start feeling bad for the things that happened in your own countries, the atrocities that are happening, the people that are just murdering each other. For what? For myths? Like the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims are fighting over Jerusalem. Yeah, for what? Because God promised the Jews, or God promised them, you know? It's just nonsense, to be honest. And then you look at stories where Like, why do we do circumcision? Like, circumcision is not mentioned in the Quran, it's not mentioned in the Hadith, but some Hadith. Like, the only reason why we're following circumcision is because we have to do. Abraham is uswatun hasana, which means like he's a good role model, so we have to follow whatever he did. So the guy cut his penis. Why did he cut his penis? When you read the Jewish books, because it was the contract between God and Abraham, like the Jews for the land. Why are we Muslims doing that? Just doesn't make sense. Okay, God promised them the land. Let them fucking. He traded them that piece of skin for the land. Why are we doing it to men? Why are we doing it to women? It's not even in our religion. Why the fuck are we following it? It doesn't make sense. At least I appreciate Christians because they didn't follow that fucking stupid tradition, cutting somebody's penis, and it causes a lot of problems too. You guys have to read about that. Like, there's so many things, so many topics. There are so many topics that you have to read about. From day one, you have to, like, from the beginning of Islam, and then the rules and why and how and all that stuff. You have to read about them. If you don't read about them, you missed half your life. You literally missed the rest of your life. Forget about half your life. The rest of your life, if you don't read about these things. So to all my friends and family, and by the way, a lot of you are may be surprised why I'm not showing my face. Of course, I don't want to be killed, so I mean, I understand it's not gonna be very possible around Western countries, but you never know. I mean, yeah, safety is better. Although I didn't say anything that was against anybody's opinions or ideas, or that's what I think. Of course, a lot of people would disagree with me, but I don't think I disrespected anybody. I respect everybody. I love everybody, and I love Muslims, and I love Christians and Jews and whatever religion that you come from. You're all beautiful creatures. I don't care. Is that you live a good life, you stay happy, and never violate anybody else, and that's it. Just whatever you do in your life, just put this rule: as long as I'm not harming somebody else, I'm okay. That's it. Just don't harm another person, or even animals. Like, respect nature and animals. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say today. I don't know what else I could say. There are so many things that I could talk about, but it's already 1 hour and 18 minutes, so I'm gonna leave it here. Thank you guys, and I really appreciate it. This is my first time speaking, and I hope, I don't know if it would be the last time, but I hope this video makes you think. I don't care if you believe or if you don't believe what I'm saying. I don't care if you, it makes no difference to me, to be honest, whatever you believe, but just believe one thing. Just have respect for other humans, and that's it. That's all I care about. Just respect other humans. Respect yourself. That's it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and I would hope to see you again and talk to you again. I'm gonna post this video today, and let's see. I mean, we can discuss things. You can write it down in the bottom of the page. I would definitely listen to it, see your opinions. Don't try to give me the shakes, what shake this said and what shake that said, because a lot of what they do is they use hadith daif, or they use ayah mansukha, which is abrogated ayahs, or they like, this is what I noticed. I noticed that they're very contradicting. They always talk about things to a group of people, then they say something the opposite to another group of people. So it depends on their views, like who they want to convince and who they don't want to convince. And there's always this contradiction between, because they're allowed to lie. They're allowed to lie in the sake of the religion, so they can lie as much as they want. And as long as they can get the numbers going, they don't care. As long as they can make a lot of money out of it, they don't care. So be honest, stay truthful, be honest to yourself, search for the evidence, go with the evidence wherever it takes you, and that's all I care about. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you soon, hopefully. You never know. Okay, bye-bye.